Hopefully I've got the look that I want. We're starting a new podcast. I'm starting a new podcast. Welcome to IDGAFluff. I originally had the Confessions with Priests. That was a super fun podcast to do. And it was a lot of fun, but it turned into something that it wasn't originally meant to be, right? Because things in my life changed, so I had to change. I had to change how I was doing things, and because it turned into a different thing. Like admittedly, I did that to myself because basically I got to the point where I couldn't handle trying to look at things in such a light and comedic perspective. If you know anything about me, I've been through a lot in my life. I survived a brutal encounter with police where I was nearly beaten to death. Like, there's a lot of things in my life that have led me to be kind of a dark person. But just like everybody thinks their perspective means a great deal, I think that I can share my perspective, and that's what really, that's what living in a democracy is all about. Having respect for the people around you, respecting their ideas, disagreeing respectively, and trying to come to a collective solution, and we don't do that anymore. So, that's what this podcast is about. And to start it off, I just want to explain what freedom of speech is. In America, we live by freedom of speech, or for the most part we do. There's a lot of constriction on speech right now, a lot of censoring going on, and companies decide what you can and can't say, and that's not a value of American living. It's not freedom of speech if I can't say whatever I want to say. Part of being able to say whatever you want to say is, if you're wrong, people are going to make sure that you know that you're wrong, and that's just the thing. We don't do that anymore. We expect people to constrict speech we don't like, and we've gone way past what freedom of speech is, and to those who say that we shouldn't allow hate speech, define hate speech for me. Because hate speech is not an objective term. It never will be, it never can be. And that's just the thing. Like, hate speech is subjective. I could say, let's just use this as an example. I can see an obese person and say, look, man, like, you should do something about your weight because that's unhealthy. To that person, that can be health speech. But what I'm saying is, in all objective truth, the truth. So, I don't see the problem there. You know what I mean? We've gotten to this point where we just coddle everybody, and it makes me sick. And that's why I started this podcast, or why I want to start this podcast. Because it's important to me that we shouldn't be bound and restricted in our thoughts. Like, and we can get into what I mean in certain instances, because context is everything. Sorry, I'm sending out a tweet real quick, see if we can get some more joiners in this biatch. But I thought that was the most important, the most important way to start this stream out, was just basically lay out what exactly I'm doing with this podcast. And part of my intro is just to explain to you why the idea of hate speech is done. And it's because anybody can find any reason to hate anything you say at any point in time. All right? You could be speaking the truth. I'm going to use J.K. Rowling as an example. People call her a TERF, this, that, and the other. But she understands biology. Like, she understands it. So you can't hate her or try to cancel her for something that we all, and you can argue with me if you want to, we all know what sex is from a biological standpoint. So it's really and then to attack her, to call her a Nazi, this, that, and the other, this, like, the fact that people are so willing to call other people Nazis, and it's the same thing with racists. The fact that everybody wants to call everybody else racist, like, that's such a dumb idea. Because we still have people living today that have suffered from actual racism. We still have people living today that suffered from real being under the thumb of the Nazi regime. Like, that's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. People don't use their words. They don't understand grammar. And even though, sure, plenty of people from different countries might end up watching this, and I hope they do, but, like, even for them, things are different. You know what I mean? Things for them are just, they're different. They don't live under the same rule set that we do. And so, I mean, really, I don't know. I don't really know how to expound on that issue anymore. Hate speech is not, you can't define it. You can't define it, period. But as I've made it pretty much well known. Oh shit. Hold on just a second. Because I'm not sure, I was supposed to grab my headphones. This should clear up any kind of audio issues I was having. I'm not even sure. I have my microphone and my stuff set up to my computer. I would record from it, but it's just been, with all the updates and whatnot, it's just not been running like I need it to run. So I'm not using it. But yeah, so hate speech is just, it's a dumb concept. People can't define it. So, I mean, I don't understand why we're still talking about it. Come up with a definition first, please. And then we can debate whether or not there is hate speech, period. But as I was saying previously, like, everybody that watches this should know that I live in America. So I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the rights that were granted to me by our founders. And the way I look at the laws in America is basically, you know, like, we have our Constitution. Those are our solidified rights. Of course, there are amendments and so on and so forth. But every right that was granted to us in the Constitution is only subverted by amendments that we add. So those are negative rights. When they pass a law, you're not gaining any more rights. They're constricting the rights of other people to make it more equitable. And that's another conversation that we can have, but that's just the truth of the matter. And equity, to me, it's just a weird idea, right? I don't understand equity, but our government, don't let me, I'm not going to allow myself to get off on a tangent. What I want to explain about America and about our government is that, we live in a democratic republic, so we vote for our leaders. Our leaders are supposed to represent our interests. There's a separation of how our leadership works. We have the House, the Congress, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. It's a matter of checks and balances, the executive, blah, blah, blah. If you really care, then you can look it up for yourself, because I'm not going to give you my explanation of it and expect you to think that is what it is. But what I want to break down, and this goes to a multitude of things, what I want to break down is our judicial system. We have all these laws that we have on the books, and I'm going to use not only gun laws but also drug laws in America to make my point. Look, we have an epidemic in America right now. We have, last year, 107,000 people died from overdoses. And a lot of those overdoses were from fentanyl, from street drugs, because the government cares so much that they're cool with you getting drunk, but they don't want you taking pills, doing this, that, and the other. We already have a mental health problem, so we're not even going to acknowledge that. We're just going to, and we're going to continue to allow pharmaceuticals to make these addicting drugs that lead to this epidemic that we're facing. And we're also going to allow free reign at the border for the cartels to be able to ship drugs like fentanyl across our southern border. So, how is this a problem of the people? How is it a problem of the people? We have laws on the books that make this shit illegal already. We have background check laws right now that are supposed to stop people that shouldn't have weapons from getting weapons, yet they don't enforce these laws. And they don't enforce these laws, and when they do enforce them, let me look back on mandatory minimums, okay? Let's just look back at mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimums on drugs. There are people that, pedophiles, and I'm probably going to get banned for saying that word on YouTube, but there are people, minor attracted people, who get less sentence for the things that they've done to children than people that might have had weed, cocaine, whatever. Dude, it doesn't matter what the drug was. When you look at how the judiciary sentences people, it's not justice. There is no justice. Like, I don't, even as an American, I can't understand the concept of justice. I just can't. Because when I look around at everything going on, I don't see how that all works out. I really don't. Like, COVID was the perfect example of that, because COVID allowed the people that we consider to be our leaders make rules for us and then not follow those same rules. And I think that should be apparent to everybody. So I don't have a lot of faith in my government. I don't believe anything they tell me. I'm making arguments. I like to quote statistics from the CDC and the FBI, but at the end of the day, I really don't trust the numbers that they're giving me, because they have an agenda. They have an agenda. They push it, and that agenda. And me being a libertarian, I understand the necessity of a government. We do need some sort of governing body, but we've gotten so far away from that principle that now government is not of the people anymore. Government is against the people, and that's a personal view. You don't have to agree with me. I would understand why you wouldn't agree with me, but it's a conversation that we can have. Another thing, and I consider myself to be a libertarian. Like, I really wish we could go back to a simpler time, you know, like the fact that we let cops be cops with a very minimum amount of training. Yet in a lot of states, you have to cut hair for 1,500 hours in order to get a license to cut hair and to make money. That's insanity. That's fucking insanity. I wish we could go back to a simpler days that if you were good at something, you were allowed to do that. You were allowed to provide that service and make money off of that service. Government has no... I mean, of course, we want to uphold health standards, this, that, and the other, but, like, we can do that without government. If people, you know, let's use a restaurant as an example. You have a restaurant that is serving trash food, has terrible customers. In America, we're free to not spend our money at that restaurant. If they fucking poison somebody, we can sue them for that. Those laws are already in place, and I'm not, like, advocating for those laws because I think they're stupid. I think the government should not be involved in a lot of the things that they are involved in because they make poor decisions. Look at their track record. They make poor decisions all the time. They get us into these wars. They spend our money. Right now, they just sent $40 billion to the Ukraine, and mothers can't get formula for their children. And there are reasons why some mothers depend on formula. It's because they're unable to breastfeed. So I keep seeing these arguments made and the blame being placed on people that are defenseless. It makes no fucking sense to me. It makes no sense at all. And so now that leads me on to my next target. The next people I'm looking at. The police. I told you guys, I survived a brutal beatdown from 2 police officers. It's on YouTube. Go watch the video. You know what I mean? A lot of people, I'm not going to open, I tell people all the time not to compare their trauma because there's a reason for that. Comparing trauma does nothing but create more conflict. Especially in America where it's so popular to be a fucking victim. Like, get over yourself. But when it comes to police, right? Police are an arm of the government. They are here to protect us. They are here to enforce the law. And when I look at what happened in Uvalde, I see a complete failure on the part of the police, DPS, all the agencies involved. All the agencies involved. Everybody there in that instance needs to be fired. You had parents that were arrested trying to save their kids. You had armed parents ready to go confront this shooter when you have 19 armed cops who are afraid to go in. That's madness. Supreme Court ruled that police don't actually have to defend you if you're being attacked. They have no obligation to do that. Bullshit. You take an oath to protect and serve. You didn't protect anybody in this particular case. So that leads us into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is gun control and everything going on in gun control land right now. I think we need to start by basically just giving the basic definition of what the Second Amendment is. The Second Amendment states clearly, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, when we look at this and we read this, you have to understand, this was written in 1789. We didn't have police forces. We didn't have the kind of communities that we have. So, and it's honestly amazing that the forefathers had the foresight to perceive this, but we didn't have police. We had good men that when they saw a crime, they would detain that person. And we still had a court system back then, so, and we've come a long way. But you have to understand that shall not be infringed is in there for a reason. And they explain, that it was to protect us from threats, both foreign and domestic. So you have to understand that it wasn't just for us to defend ourselves against like other nations that might try to invade us. And I'm not a lawyer, but when I look at the Second Amendment and think about threats, foreign and domestic, like when you live in a small town and let's say a bear just all of a sudden decides it wants to start hunting humans because they're feeble, they're easy to kill. Why wouldn't you want to be able to defend yourself from that? And then you can take that even deeper. You know what I mean? If you have somebody attacking you, why wouldn't you want to be able to defend yourself? This is the Second Amendment. This is what it's here for. Okay? You can argue about what guns we should and shouldn't be able to have, but what people are proposing when they propose gun control and taking away people's guns, you have to understand that they don't want all the guns. They only want the guns from those compliant enough to give them away. It's not like our government is going to disarm themselves. It's not like our police officers are going to disarm themselves. And what purpose does that serve? Because then that means that nobody can defend themselves if criminals who aren't going to give up their guns attack. Did you think about that? Have I made that point clear? Criminals are not going to give up their guns. Politicians, the army, the police, they are not going to give up their guns. What if Donald Trump would have said, time to give up all your guns? Would you have done it? Would you, after Charlottesville, which didn't even involve guns, would you give up your guns? Because the government said you had to? That's just them exerting force over you. That is them exerting power over you. The Constitution is about making sure that we're all on equal footing in terms of power. We elect people to represent us because we hope that they will do the things that we wish them to do, but they don't do that. They don't do that. So, I mean, what is the point? Really, what is the point? And I'm going to have to go through my notifications real quick because I did find somebody who made an interesting point on the idea of militias and why they are important and why regulation doesn't really help with that particular thing, right? Let me just find this real quick. We got to be pretty close. Here we are. Show this thread. Alright, so this guy. Yes, militia is discussed outside the 2A. Constitution Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress power over a national defense, including the Army, Navy, and militia. If we want to understand what the 2A means by well-regulated militia, that's where we have to start. First, note that the framers didn't trust standing armies. Period. That's saying that they didn't trust themselves. They knew that Caesar had led his troops across the Rubicon to crush the Republic and foresaw that a too strong standing army could topple their nascent democracy in a military coup, which we've seen countlessly. According to the framers, allowed for a permanent navy but a temporary army because they knew that one day this shit would happen. The government would say, we want your guns, and they would want the army to be army. The people with guns, tanks, so and so forth, would have the power to disarm the populace. So, originally, the thought of a militia was basically what we see as the army today. Trained people that came from their localities to defend us on a bigger scale, right? That's basically. In 1787's army, in 1787, armies weren't hard to create quickly. Just pull cannons out of a warehouse, requisition a bunch of mule and horses, and call for volunteers. So when Joe Biden says you couldn't buy a cannon when the Second Amendment was, no, you're wrong, bro. Because at that point in time, the government didn't have an army. They didn't have the armaments necessary to defend the country. So they depended on the people of the country with the arms that they needed to defend the country to do so. They hired people with boats to become battleships to defend our fucking country. So this talk is just, it amazes me. He goes on to say the militia, the framers didn't mean the Proud Boys, Three Percenters, and similar beer-swilling yahoos acting on their own initiatives. Yeah, we don't want vigilante justice. We want justice, but we want it to be enacted by the people. They meant volunteer professional soldiers who would be equipped, trained, regulated, and deployed by Congress, just like the military is supposed to be. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So, and I find it ironic that they bring up the idea of the insurrection in this particular thread. Because we had an insurrection, and we saw what happened. Or we had an insurrection. I don't even believe it was an insurrection, but I mean, people, and go ahead, judge away. I'm not a fucking Republican. I don't give a fuck about Republicans. I really don't give a fuck about our political system right now. It's a joke. Two-party rule is not a rule at all. It's one side or the other. Either you agree with my side or you're the enemy, and that's where we are right now. We can't have nuanced conversations anymore. It's fucking stupid. So, Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the unions and suppress insurrections and repel invasions. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing parties, such part of them as may be employed by the service of the United States. So they're basically saying that our representatives should be members of our militias. So when it comes down to it, all these blowhards in Congress that keep telling you that you should give away your guns should be the first people online with a gun to protect us from all these tragedies, the enemies that we face. But they're not doing that. They make, let's look at Nancy Pelosi. They make millions of dollars in office by cheating the law and doing all kinds of other shit. So it's so hard for me to get on board with any of that. And with that, I'm going to segue into the next, because these laws, these gun laws, and a lot of people want to say that America is a really racist nation. We're founded in racism. You can't find that argument. I think you really have to dig really hard to make that argument about the Constitution. And I mean, we do have history to look back on. Of course, slavery was still legal when the Constitution was written, but the Constitution itself had a lot of foresight into the future. Of course, everybody believes that slavery is wrong. So, like, it makes sense that they would say all men are created equal, because their vision for America was a free America where everyone was created equally. You can't say that it wasn't, because it's in our founding documents. But when we look at gun control, let's think about people that are already oppressed by guns, which is everybody. But if you listen to a lot of the political pundits, or you know anything about states such as Illinois and New York, in those states, they're Democrat-run states that have strict gun laws that don't allow people to protect themselves. Chicago literally sees 2 people die every day, every weekend. I think on average they have 30 shootings a weekend, and on average 5 people die from those shootings every weekend. So when you take away gun rights, what you're doing is hurting minorities. All minorities. Doesn't matter. We can look at the riot in 92 in LA and the fact that Korean people were targeted, and those Korean people literally had to defend themselves. If you don't know anything about the 92 riots, look it up, dude. It's a crazy thing to look at in America's past. And you'll find a lot of different, it's really hard to pinpoint. Like, I see weak leadership problems left and right. When I look back on this incident, I saw racism. I definitely saw racism, but I saw it in its most evil form, where everybody hated everybody. Blacks hated whites, but they also hated Mexicans. They also hated Asians. Mexicans hated Asians. Asians hated whites. Asians hated Mexicans. Asians hated cops. Dude, it was all hatred. And it was born out of weak leadership. The people that were in power promised things would get better, and then made issues out of things that were not issues at the time. That brought it to be more racially charged. Maxine Waters was one of those people. She's still in Congress and still making threats. She said, if you see somebody that says this, confront them, go to the restaurants, make sure that they know that they aren't welcome here. That's our Congress? These are the people leading us? These are the people unifying us? No. It's not. That's trash. It's fucking trash. That's unbelievable. Totally fucking unbelievable. And what I want, and another thing that I wanted to do, look, I live in Amarillo, Texas. It's a pretty white city. I'm going to go through the demographics as of the most recent census gathering. 82% white, 7% African American, 5% Asian, 5% mixed race. Don't know what this is supposed to be. 3% other race, and 1% Native American, or a 0.5% Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. So, I mean, you could say, yeah, Amarillo is a pretty non-diverse city. Sure, you can say that, but I grew up in a poor neighborhood. In a neighborhood that probably had 20 houses, give or take, on a block. There were only 2 white families on the block. And when I was growing up, race was never an issue. I was bullied a lot, and I fought white people more than anybody else. I was bullied by other white people more than anybody else. And it was a lot more easy for me to become friends with Mexicans. My best friends were Asians. And I had quite a few black friends as well. I mean, we've all grown. I live in a neighborhood now that's not great. Let's see. We have Gerald and another black person who live on this block. And there's only 12 houses on this block. So we have 2 blacks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Mexican families and 3 white families on the block right now. A couple empty houses. It's a pretty diverse neighborhood, right? This is rural America. This is not New York. This is not LA, you know. But there's not a racial problem in my city. You don't see a lot of that. You know what I mean? And people will be like, oh, you're just a closet racist. No, I just don't see racism. I see a lot of fucking poor people trying to get out of the fucking bottom of all different kinds of races. And I see us being oppressed by, more often than not, just rich people in general. And that's unacceptable to me. And I'm going to speak truth to that power, because that is the truth. That they hold all the power. There are several notable people of color in my city who make a lot of money, who do a lot, and I'm not saying they're all bad people. Several of them do local charities. Amarillo Housing First, which provides housing to the homeless, the people that are at least willing to work themselves out of homelessness. But not all rich people are bad, and I'm not going to say all bad people are rich, because that's obviously not the case. But race relations in America, as they are portrayed in the media right now, are horrific, terrible, and just not the truth. They're just not the truth. And I really wish people would take that into account, because I see a lot of people don't take that into account, and it's disheartening. But on to the probably most controversial topic of the day. I don't give a fluff about your gender identity, dude. I don't give a fluff about your gender identity. Period. And for this one, I'm going to go directly to the dictionary. And by using the dictionary, I also am going to go into the fact that words basically don't mean anything anymore. Like the term Nazi, like the term racist, those words don't mean anything anymore. Now, when we look at the Oxford Dictionary, under their second breakdown of the word, either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions. Sex. That is sex. Now, gender has been along for a really long time, and when the concept of gender was first brought up, it was used in language to describe the sexing of words. Because what a lot of people don't understand is, in other languages, especially romantic languages, every word, if you use a word with the incorrect gender, it doesn't mean the same thing. Right? Like, let's just use Latino and Latina, right? Latino often refers to a insert Latin country man, right? But Latino is also the word that they would use to describe a group of their people. Not Latinx. If you saw a group of Mexicans, men and women, you would say a gathering of Latinos. Just like they have so many different little clubs in the government, But that's what gender really is about. It's about language. It's not about sexual identity. Now, I've tried to explain to y'all that I'm a libertarian. The role of the government to me has been so far out of line. We weren't meant to have this much government. They weren't meant to be able to have this much access into what we do as Americans, because we are here to be in pursuit of happiness under our Constitution, right? So, and this goes along with the drug war. I don't care what you put in your body. I don't care. The fact that the government lost the drug war. They lost, they're still losing, and they still say that it's something worth fighting for. No, it's not. We've been doing this for 50 years now. Plus, nothing has changed. People are still doing drugs. We're free, so we should be able to make those decisions for ourselves. But yet, you make it a law so that you can incriminate us, put us in jail, make us work for you. It's dumb. And the same thing goes for your sexual identity, your sexual orientation, your sexual preference. I don't give a fuck. I'm 34 years old. I was around when I grew up. When I was growing up, when I was younger, being gay was really a taboo subject. Right? I had a gay uncle. My family is Baptist. And he was shunned by his own family for his sexual orientation. This is the reason why I'm agnostic today. I don't believe in organized religions, because even though the morals of their stories are good, they just further divide us. And that's why I've read bits and pieces of the Quran, the Mahabharata, the Bible, and although they promote good things, like nothing really good comes of religion. It doesn't. It just further divides us. And so we have to take these things into perspective, right? And I'm one of those people that wants to engage with people on Twitter and just engage with people in general, because perspective is just like context is key, perspective is key too. It's really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand everything that they have going on in their life, but perspective is everything. And that leads me to, I've been pretty active on Twitter as of late, and one thing that I'm noticing is that we're in the midst of a culture war. Culture's rapidly evolving. There's a lot of things going on. And one thing, besides the mental health epidemic, I think this gender identity and gender ideology that we see happening on a daily basis is really starting to corrupt our country. Because, like I said, we went through the biology of sex just now. So, let's talk about it. I don't care if you want to transition, all right? I don't care, whatever makes you happy. But do I agree with grooming our children to give them the idea that transitioning is the thing to do? No, I don't. There are studies that already show that, teens that people with gender dysphoria that don't go through transition often just turn out to be gay. And I'm cool with that. And I'm cool with you being trans. I don't give a fuck. But if you're going to make me contort to your reality, to ignore basic facts that, look, people aren't going to like this, but the fact is, men cannot become women, women cannot become men, is impossible. You can talk about the future and how it might be possible in the future. We're talking about today. My issue with the trans community, trans right activists right now, is that they already have rights. All right? Gays and lesbians, black people fought for their rights over centuries' time. All right? I don't know when the trans movement started or when this became a thing, but I know that it's not very old at all. But yet, they've made more progress than any other group in the short amount of time that they've been around, and their progress is so radical that it requires us, the rest of us, to bend to their ideology. Look, I don't give a fuck what you do, but I don't have to play into your game. Alright? I don't have to. So the trans community, I say, dude, live your life. Do you. But don't expect me to do your life for you. To disregard what I believe and what I know to be the truth to appease you. I'm not going to do it. A lot of people aren't going to do it. I'm not going to say that you're crazy. Gender dysphoria is a medical issue right now. And I can't understand it because I don't go through it. But I see what's happening around the conversation, and I know that I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to feed into your ideology. I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to hear about how... I'll bring up an example. After the Uvalde shooting, during the hours that we do nothing, and I hate when news organizations immediately start trying to ascribe a motive to a shooter. They start doing all this digging up. Now, Matt Bender, blue check mark on Twitter, wrote an article about how two trans men that look like women, were smeared because they look like the shooter, and right-wing ideologues, gender-critical people started attacking those people. Or, I don't even know what they mean by attacking, harassing. Those words mean nothing because they're used so much that they have no meaning anymore. Like, the true definition of harassment is not what it was 5 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever. So, I really think that's a really dumb argument to make, but I find it ironic that these people are so narcissistic that on the heels of a tragedy, on the same fucking day, they would make it out to be about them. About how two men who were wearing skirts, makeup, women's clothing, were smeared for being the shooter, and how their feelings are more important than the 19 parents that are grieving the loss of their children, and the two families grieving the loss of their wife, mom, those teachers that were involved. Dude, I don't care about your feelings in this case. I don't give a fuck if you want to lop your dick off and wear a fucking a skirt and parade in public and say that you're a woman. Do that. But number one, you're not a woman. Number two, you pretending to be a woman actually takes away from women. That's why I really think that the T's stand for themselves. Go ahead and disconnect yourself from the LGBT community because you don't care about lesbians and gays. I keep seeing these articles about how gay men should be okay with vaginal sex. Dude, that's not their preference. I'm not gay, but if I was a gay dude, I would want dick. Period. That's what I would want. I don't need a news outlet telling me that it's okay for me to want to have sex with a man who got a vagina installed. That's not gay sex. It's just not. Even if the dude is still a dude, which ironically is what you guys are saying, what the trans community is saying, then you're anti-trans, you're transphobe. Get the fuck out of here. Your arguments are not made in science, they're not made in fact, and I don't have to pretend that they are. I don't give a fluff. I don't give a fluff. But, The world is a crazy place. America's changing rapidly. The world is changing rapidly. None of us can make sense of it all. And the whole reason for me introducing this new podcast was to put my perspective out there. I hope people watch. I hope people listen. I hope people are willing to challenge my ideas so that we can actually come to, first of all, find an agreement somewhere where we can agree on, and then finally come up with some kind of solutions to the problems that we see. And that doesn't mean that I'm always going to say that the problems you bring up are actual problems, because I don't believe that all the time. I'm going to say things are non-issues. You're going to think that they're issues. There's going to be disagreements. But at the end of the day, we all just got to start coming together. It's not us versus them. It's not me versus you. We're a collective here. So we need to collectively get our minds together and come to an agreement. And right now, that's not what politicians want. That's not the aim of politics right now. Politics is only here to divide us. Shout out to the Libertarian Party. I hope that y'all can get something going on. Dave Smith, shout out to that guy. I really hope you run for president. Michael Malice, keep up the good work. Keep trolling. I fucking love it. And I want this to be a thing. I don't give a fluff to be a thing. And I think we're gonna do it once a week. We're gonna talk about news topics and how they relate to the state of our nation in general, and the state of just politics and issues around the world. Because let's not pretend that these issues only happen in America. It's dumb to think that. We can talk about school shootings. Sure, they happen here, but they happen everywhere. People pretend that they don't. That's a lie. It's just not true. So these are conversations that people need to have. I want people to feel safe having these conversations. I may disagree with you, but I'm never going to think lesser of you for having a different opinion. There's too much of that already. People already just, they want it to be about them in a way they feel. And that's just not reality. It's not reality. And I think we need to find ourselves and reground ourselves in reality. It's time to actually do what needs to be done. You know what I mean? Have these conversations and just be real about it, because there's a lot of fake shit going on. There's a lot of, and it's not to clown anybody's opinions, but they make these arguments, but they have no solid facts. It has no basis in reality. And I think these are conversations that we need to start having on a regular basis in order for the growth of our country. Like, we need to do more to really curb some of the polarization that we see happening. We need to find a way to come together. My solution is this: as much as I can enjoy takes from Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, so I'll just get high together, bro. You're always knocking me for smoking weed, but it really helps me think. If you knew anything about weed, there's sativas, there's indicas, there's things that help you think and motivate your brain to open perspective a little more. You know what I mean? That allow your brain. Literally, I'll think about something, and I'll think about it in a different way purely because I smoked a little weed. It took me a long time. I smoked some weed, and I did a really hard look at abortion and viability. We're able to make sure babies can survive after 21 weeks. So I don't, I'm not a pro-life person. I don't think we should take away women's autonomy. When I don't think but let's be honest, bro. If a baby can live outside the womb, how can you say that they're not killing that baby to perform an abortion? And that's abortion defined by the CDC. Because you can have miscarriages. They're unfortunate. They can happen way late in a pregnancy. My brother, his girlfriend carried a baby for 8.5 months and it died. It was born still. Had showed up, had a heartbeat, all that through 8.5 months. And then something terrible just happened. So it happened. But it doesn't have to be, right now the conversation is, do we ban it outright, or do we allow people to start having elective abortions the day before they deliver their baby? That's the way they're framing the conversation, and that's not how most people think about it. Most people are in the middle, But yet they want you to believe that, like, if Roe versus Wade gets overturned, that no, dude. Colorado already said that they're going to allow abortions up until the day that a woman has a birth or would have a birth. So it makes no difference if they overturn Roe versus Wade. States are going to do. Oklahoma won't let you have an abortion at all, except for limited restrictions. Rape, incest, and some other things. I'm not sure what it is. I just know that the simple gist of it is as soon as the baby is conceived, as soon as you find out you're pregnant, you cannot elect. You cannot choose to have an abortion. Unless that abortion is, there's something so wrong with the fetus, or there's something so dangerous to the mother that they have to abort the child according to the CDC and the CDC definition. And yet that's another thing that has been taken by the T movement. Men cannot get pregnant. Men cannot get pregnant. There's no need for me to give you a connotation. All right? Trans men can get pregnant only because they're fucking women. All right? Trans women who are men cannot get pregnant. So therefore, there's no need for them to be in the argument of abortion. They can't have them. All right? It's fucking dumb to even think so. But I digress. I was getting ready to end this up. This is I Don't Give a Fluff. This is something that I want to do. So I'm going to continue to do it. I'm hoping to get, some people watching. I'm hoping to get some people to join the conversations. Like, let's talk about this. Let's be adults. Let's have adult conversations and try and come up with adult solutions to the problems that we have right now. Because all this fighting and bickering and all this shit, even me on Twitter sometimes, like, some of the shit I do is so fucking childish, but I do it to prove points. But let's get beyond this. Let's sit down like adults and have these conversations, these real raw conversations about things that need to be, and come up with some fucking solution. I don't think that's too much to ask, And if anybody has a problem with what you think, tell them, I don't give a fluff, bro. I don't give a fluff. I'm out for today, y'all.